Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of Industry Insights. Today we have with us Jaideep Agarwal, who is the leader of the Hyderabad Capability Center of Warner Brothers Discovery. Jaideep is a veteran in the GCC field. Over his career, he has helped in incubating, scaling, and transforming large global business services or global capability center setups in India. He was formerly a managing director at Goldman Sachs and at Deloitte, and has led teams and businesses across industry verticals. Jaideep, thank you very much for joining us today. You've been a personal witness almost of the growth of the GCC industry in India through your various stints at all these companies. Tell us a little bit about your personal journey. How did you even get into this area? How did you get into this field? What led you to being what you are and finally ending up at Warner Brothers Discovery?
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me and thanks for having me over. I would say it was by accident or by chance that I got into the GCC world. That was way back in 2000 when Amex, American Express, had set up their own financial center in Delhi. And one of my colleagues, ex-colleagues of my prior firm, he joined and then he referred me into Amex, and I had absolutely no idea what was I getting into. But then there was this notion of, hey, American Express, it's a large iconic brand, maybe let me just join and see. That's when I got introduced to the concept of, I would say, offshore centers or captive centers or whatever nomenclature you want to use on that. So that was my, I would say, commencement of journey in the space of GCCs, and mostly it was around finance and accounting space. I was helping do some transitions, re-engineering, and that kind of work. And then over the years, my own thought process solidified. So I had different stints across, say, a third party and multiple other GCC setups. And at some point in time, I felt that, you know what, that's the right space for me. What I want to do is help incubate, help say transition work and start off these GCCs and take them to greater heights. So that was, I would say,
Wonderful.
An accidental way of me getting into the world of GCC.
Beautiful. And so what happened after American Express?
So I did a couple of other different stints. There was one at IBM that just acquired Daksh. I did a few years. I think that was the time when I personally realized that what makes me happy or what makes me comfortable is leading and managing large teams.
Wonderful.
And that was the time when I just took a different track, saying, you know what, I had done multiple project management, I would say, roles. I'd done transition. I'd done multiple different roles. But then I felt that leading large teams, working with people, talking to them on a day-to-day basis, helping solve problems they are having, I think that's when. So I joined a third party. I was with Putney, which eventually through a series of acquisitions got acquired and is now part of Capgemini. But then with Deloitte and Goldman, again, it was very clear being able to set up, scale, and transform some of these business functions. I think that's kind of really brought me, and then eventually now in Warner Brothers.
Wonderful. And some of these capabilities you're talking about of forming and then scaling these large teams are industry agnostic in a sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You've gone across at least 3 industries, maybe more.
Oh, multiple. I would say multiple.
Yeah.
I would say financial services, professional services, technology, definitely in one of this, and now media and entertainment.
Absolutely.
And I had zero idea about how media and entertainment as an industry worked, but the reality is that the skill as a leader of a GCC is so agnostic of the industry that you could pretty much pick it up and replicate it across different industries.
Well, I'm a fellow traveler in that journey because I also had my own experiences building Accenture's GCC. But I must say that I think people like you who have seen traversed the entire journey, you have been catalysts in what is probably one of the largest transformations India has seen.
Yeah.
Not just from a corporate perspective, but I think even the social fabric of the country has changed. Thanks to these shared services, offshore centers, now called innovation centers, GCCs, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Warner set up quite more recently than the others, right?
That's right.
They're a later entrant into this GCC wave, but you probably set up with a very different ambition.
Yeah.
Not the aspiration of the old offshore centers, which started off as transaction factories. So maybe tell me, with the benefit of hindsight, and now with your leadership role at Warner, how are you guys thinking about this center here in Hyderabad? What does it mean to Warner Brothers Discovery? And how is it going to actually help in Warner's journey of growth, of revenue, whatever,
Sure,
so on?
sure. No, thanks. And the way I describe this journey of Warner Brothers Discovery is we are a startup with a 100-year legacy. That's the way I describe. We just celebrated 100 years of Warner Brothers
Amazing.
Discovery. In fact, I don't know, many people don't even realize Warner Brothers Pictures has been in India since 1930s. So it's over 90 plus years when they have been here in India. Multiple genre, be it across linear or be it across now our OTT platforms. So fast forward to what we did in terms of setting up this global capability center. Very clearly, when the two firms came together, this was a merger when AT&T hived off, divested off the Warner part of the business, and Discovery bought over, and this became a combined entity as Warner Brothers Discovery. I think there was an immediate need felt to leverage the global capability center ecosystem. And we had some presence in Poland through a prior television or a news network. We set up something in Mexico, but then the fact that we now need a setup which can help cater to global needs, global requirements, standardization of processes, optimizing the way we are delivering services, which led us to establishing our center in Hyderabad. Now, centers which got established, say, in early 2000, had the luxury of a maturity curve of 20, 25 years. We do not have that luxury.
You're collapsed.
Very clearly, I see us maximum next 3 to 5 years is where we need to be, where others have reached in a 25-year kind of a time period. Now, so as we move forward, if you were to think of evolution of GCCs, right? So there were these, I would say, offshore centers, which became an extension to the office. Then they became some kind of, I would say, continuous improvement and eventually innovation hub. So it's almost called like 4 stages of evolution of GCCs. Practically, we are operating amongst all the 3 out of the 4, be it in terms of starting off with the shift. We have work which we are doing at this place. So we are already doing improvement on those areas. We are innovating in terms of, okay, here's a new system, here's a new process. What is the best way to leverage those from a global environment there? So what do we see, or how do we help Warner Brothers is fundamentally we are in the business of storytelling.
Yeah.
That's the way. We have multiple brands and franchise to help create content. And I see this GCC right in the core or the heart of being in that story of Warner Brothers creating content which is much more inclusive, much more diverse, and it is very equitable to all the recipients of the content or consumers of content there. This is going to be at the core or the heart of the Warner Brothers Discovery global system. That's, I would say, how this center is being looked at. Yeah.
Very inspiring, Jaideep, and very heartwarming, I would say. As an Indian, and I feel so encouraged to hear you say this, that if the large corporations of the world are going to drive their central part of their business out of India, like you said, you want to be at the core of Warner Brother Discovery's business of content creation and content dissemination and all of that. That means many things, right? The implications of that are huge. The implications of that on leadership, the implications on that on talent, and the kind of, even the implication on the relationship between the parent and I call it the parent and the GCC, but maybe there's a better word for it. So I want to touch on some of these aspects because I think you've just opened up my mind to many new dimensions. So one of the things, Jaideep, that I often think about is, you as a leader of India leader of the GCC, and actually probably over a period of time you'll become the leader of all the GCCs, probably the network of GCCs. I'm very sure that will happen. How would you balance global pressures and local expectations, right? There's a very nice cliched saying, I think, think global, act local, etc. That's all very nice to say in theory, but you are right in the middle of it, because you have to take those thoughts, and then you have the local realities here. So maybe give an example of how that manifests itself in day to day.
Sure. That's a very great question.
Yeah.
Thanks on that. Clearly, I think organizations have a culture which has evolved over a period of time, and there is an expected way of doing things in currently established offices. When you set up a new GCC, there's an aspect of localization which you were referring to on some of these. I would say classic examples are right from our how do you recruit people? What's the recruitment pipeline looking like? How many number of rounds of interviews you want to go through, etc. Right from that aspect to how do you onboard people? How do you equip them with the right tools and resources for them to be productive? And how soon are you going to do that? So there are multiple aspects around from thinking global and acting local. That's what I would say. So I think 2 or 3 things what we have done is, one, it's very important to bring in these leaders who are functionally owning different verticals in whichever part of the world into India, so that there's an immersive experience of how things happen locally. And I have seen in multiple different, across my career, it's not just Warner, I would say, across my career, that the thought process, that the mind share and the mindset, there's a significant transition the moment somebody lands here and sees. Like in recent times, I have seen people when they look out of our office and look around in the high-tech city area, they're like, oh my God, we could be sitting anywhere in the world. This could be New York, London, or Hong Kong. And I didn't even realize that this kind of an infrastructure exists, or this is the kind of talent which is available. Because what started as a journey of, hey, let's put in a few transactions into this, to now being able to do much more complex aspects of work, etc. I would say, one, as I said, having an immersive experience for those leaders to come in and interact with those people. Second is helping them go meet with other similar GCCs in terms of what have they done, what works best for them. Look, I can sit here, I can tom-tom about myself saying, hey, I'm the best thing in the world, we are the best thing in the world. But then when you hear some of the other industry peers talking about what has their learning experience been, what have they done to make sure that things are really exciting for the local aspect, I think. So that's the second part. I think over the years, now again, depends on the industry. If you're in a financial services industry, say tied to the Wall Street, or say on the stock exchange, etc., if you are doing that work, you got to follow a holiday calendar, which is very much aligned to that respective market, say, be it Europe or whatever. But then if you're agnostic of that, right? I remember the days back when I started in this, a lot of the holidays only used to be, say, if my parent is the US holidays to be followed here in India. I think over a period of time, we have seen the shift in terms of how organizations have evolved to say, okay, that's fine. There's the sense of appreciation that Diwali is equivalent to a Christmas.
Very good.
So I understand people need to take time off around that. So I would say there's an aspect of bringing them in, immersive experience, helping them talk to other industry peers, and then constant education around, okay, what's good for local, while being aligned to the global priority. I would say these are some of the steps.
Very nice.
Which are very
brilliant.
good.
I totally, and you were mentioning before the camera started rolling that Friday evenings are no longer, a time when the US calls are being scheduled.
Yes.
Not the general scheduled calls. I mean, if there's an emergency, of course. If there is a client urgency, then of course you have to do it. And this is great. This is great because I think what this signifies is a rebalancing of the equation between the GCC and the parent. It is not a It's not a vendor-supplier type of relationship. It's a partnerial relationship,
Absolutely.
which is brilliant. And I think having leaders like you in place actually helps that, eases that journey, because there is a spokesperson, there is someone who can communicate that.
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. Good. You were also mentioning earlier, Jaideep, about being a global process owner. And you have been one at Deloitte and earlier in your career. That comes with its own challenges, I can imagine. I was at another GCC recently, and the global CTO sits out of India. The whole digital transformation of that company, and it's not a small company, is being driven out of Hyderabad. And I was like blown out of my mind when I heard that. But I'm just wondering, leaders like that, how do you manage such a diverse team? You're diverse in terms of geographies, in terms of cultures, in terms of time zones, in terms of languages. I mean, you can't ask for more diversity, right? So how do you manage such a diverse team, which is also globally distributed?
Yeah. Okay. So my current role is local Hyderabad. So I just want to caveat that. But
That's
then
okay. But
my
you've done
prior
it in the
experience,
past, yes.
absolutely. My prior experiences, I think there are 2 or 3 aspects. Again, I think it's the reverse of what I just talked about, thinking global, acting local. Now, as I have interacted with local, now to expect that every single individual in my network of responsibility will be thinking the same way, that's a bit of an unwiring, which I have to do, and a bit of a rewiring. And the only way it worked for me was by me having a good immersive experience in those markets, spending time with them, and being able to, just understand what is it that ticks for them.
Correct.
I'll give you a simple example. Like in one of my earlier firms, when I took on that global responsibility, and I was on a regular trip in a city. I decided, okay, let me meet with my team members in that city, and I just asked one of my leaders to say, hey, can we get all the people who are in this city together and I can have a conversation? And she came back saying, when do you want to do it? I said, hey, why don't we do it later this evening or tomorrow? She says, Jaideep, not possible. And I was like, why is that the case? Maybe we would have easily done that, say in India and all. And then when I realized that I was given a sense that I hope you understand, Jaideep, there are certain schedules people follow. If some of them are working from home, they need to make sure that from a transportation perspective, to make sure the kids are being taken care of, etc. So we need to give them enough notice for them to be able to arrange for the support ecosystem, etc. And that was such an aha moment for me, and I was like, wow. I mean, in a lot more, I would say, well, India has a lot of nuclear families, but then there's so much of a fallback option in our households where invariably you will have an in-laws or a parent or a brother or a sister, and you are like, that's fine, somebody will take care of it. And that's not a reality when it's primarily a nuclear family, etc. So that was a big aha moment for me myself.
It's interesting, huh?
So understanding what is it that makes people tick, I think that's the key of going and doing a global role. That's one. Be communication. I think there is nothing I can understate about communication. It's so key, because if you're not there, then there are all these rumor mills and all these grapevines. So it's very critically important for a leader to either show up in person or be there either on a call or all hands, and making sure that they're hearing directly from you. That's the second part. And I think the third aspect, I believe very strongly, is the more human side of you people are able to see, everybody realizes that an individual sitting in India or any other part of the world is fundamentally the same. It does not matter which part of the world you are.
Beautiful.
I think more often than not, as we had grown up in the ecosystem, we had always been like, hey, hide your feelings. Don't show what's coming up on your face. But I am realizing personally that the more I'm able to share what's going on in my mind. And even at times it may mean that, hey, I'm not sure about what am I doing, and can I, ratify those ideas with a couple of others. The more people are able to relate to you and say, oh my God, he or she is as much a human as me, can make the similar mistakes. And that's what connects people. I feel that's critically important. Fundamentally, you can bring in people with any kind of technical skills, but it's very important to get the mind share of people through the personal connect. That's my ethos, is what I would say.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Jaideep. My own personal experiences also suggest that. And I think one of the things you said that struck me while you were speaking, that triggered my thought, and I'll share it with you, is we may have a lot of differences, cultures, languages, geographies, whatever. But there is also something that unites us, in spite of those differences. And what that is our shared consciousness, our shared humanness. That unites us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you bring that to the surface? You talked about communication as a way. You talked about being vulnerable as a way, right? You talked about going there and being immersed in their culture, in their ecosystem for a while to understand. In all of this, you're showing your human side and you're understanding their human side. And I think that is what is the uniting glue, the binding factor across all these teams. And I resonate with that, because at one time I was running a team in Warsaw, Rio in Brazil, and Tallinn in China, and Warsaw in Poland. So I had the whole footprint, and I did exactly what you did. Unfortunately, during COVID, we had a rough time.
Of course.
All those strains got broken, and that was a very tough period. But no, it's brilliant, Jaideep. And obviously it has served you well.
It has, definitely.
It has served you well, and you've done really well with that.